Greetings. Hello and welcome to the first Arts Forum for the City of Cambridge. This is the first of what we hope will be a series of conversations with the arts community here around the topics that are most pressing for you. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your time and your questions with our panelists. There has been a terrific response to the Arts Forum. We had 213 people registered to join us this evening. My name is Dany Joachim, a former poet populist of Cambridge, and I am currently the poet in residence at First Church in Cambridge.
And my name is Marissa Molinar. I am the director of Midday Movement Series, a grassroots initiative cultivating a new generation of dance leaders in the Boston area. And I'm also a freelance professional dancer in my own right, performing with companies all over the greater Boston area. And we're both so happy to be here.
Thank you again for joining us for this forum today. I want to mention one option from producer and artist Adrian Wong. Since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, let's also take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technology, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect indigenous people worldwide. I invite you to join us in acknowledging all this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time, and for each of us consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship.
Tonight, we will start with presentations from our panelists, followed by questions and answers, with questions we've received ahead of time and live questions at the end. For the live question segment, you can choose to ask your question yourself so we can see and hear your question in your own voice, or you can choose to have either myself or Dany read your questions. To indicate that you would like to ask your question yourself with your video and sound on, please use the hand raising function and type your question in the Q&A box and add the letter S for speaking at the beginning of your question. If you would prefer to have your question read by the moderators, add the letter R for read at the beginning of the question. We will go through all of this again at the beginning of the Q&A segment, and don't worry if you get confused. Just type your question into the Q&A box and staff will help you from there.
Our presenters today include Vice Mayor Malone, Jason Weeks, Executive Director of Cambridge Arts, Geta Predan, President of Cambridge Community Foundation, Michael Monestine, Executive Director, Central Square, BEAD, Josephine Wendell, Associate Chief, Population Health Initiatives in Cambridge Public Health Department, Lisa Hemerley, Economic Development Director, Community Development Department, and Matthew Nelson, Assistant to the City Manager of City of Cambridge.
We are grateful to Matthew Nelson, Assistant to the City Manager, for joining us this evening and for his support and to everyone's support for the arts and interest in hearing from the community in this arts forum. Matt will now go ahead and give welcoming remarks to begin our program for this evening.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the city manager did have a last-minute conflict tonight and is unable to attend. He does send his regrets and asked me to present his remarks in his absence. Again, I'm Matt Nelson, Assistant to the City Manager for Community Relations, and I've also been serving on the City Manager's COVID Arts Reopening Group since the summer. This evening, we will hear from representatives from the city and our partners across the arts and culture community. We look forward to this discussion and hearing from the community as we continue to work through the effects of COVID-19. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Cambridge Arts and all the organizers that helped make tonight possible, as well as our moderators and CCTV for hosting us virtually. We will hear more tonight about our collaborations and partnerships in the arts and culture community. But first, I'd like to briefly touch on a few highlights, as well as give a quick update on where we are as a city in relation to COVID-19. COVID-19 has stretched us all. Here in the city, we have changed the way we do business, all while trying to keep the community healthy and safe. No sector has been spared from this pandemic, and our nonprofit community and our artist community certainly feels the impact of COVID-19 restrictions and guidelines that came with it. Currently in Cambridge, we are aligned with the state on our reopening guidelines that are set at Phase 3, Step 1, which allows for outdoor theaters and performance venues, and indoor performance venues are part of Phase 3, Step 2. As you may know, today, the governor announced additional updates to the state's reopening plans, including to moving into Phase 3, Step 2 on Monday, which is March 1st, as well as increasing capacity limits. Here in Cambridge, what we've continued to do throughout is meet internally and with our experts, and we will update the community on our decision in the coming days. We haven't always moved with the state. We've worked internally and collaboratively on our cautious approach. In Cambridge, we have taken a very cautious and measured approach through the pandemic when it comes to reopening. We are proud of the work we have done to keep our community safe and our positivity rate low. We are not alone in this, and we are grateful to our nonprofits, art organizations, and businesses who have all stepped up and partnered with us as they work to keep their employees, members, and patrons safe. Our working relationship with the nonprofit, arts, and business communities have been vital during this time. Last summer, as we began to reopen different aspects of our government and sector-specific industries, working with the Vice Mayor, the City Manager asked Jason Weeks to convene an Arts Reopening Advisory Group to work with leaders in our cultural district and other pillars of our creative community. Thanks to Jason, Kirsten, and all the members of the Arts Reopening Advisory Group who have met almost every week since July, working through all of the issues and planning on reopening. This group has been vital for us as a city and has allowed for collaboration among our arts and culture partners. Again, working with the mayor and the vice mayor, along with partners in the community, the city has been able to provide needed funds directly to our arts organizations and creative community here in Cambridge. Our panelists will certainly touch on this as part of the agenda, but we are proud of the over $2 million in funds distributed during the COVID crisis since last March, specifically to our nonprofit and arts sector. And I'd like to thank Gita and the Cambridge Community Foundation for their continued partnership in fundraising and distribution. Last year, during the budget process, and following the recommendation from the Mayor's Arts Task Force, the city manager created a new position in the city, Director of Arts and Culture Planning. However, due to financial planning for COVID-19, most of our new and vacant positions in the city that were budgeted were put on hold until April of this year. We have started the process internally, and a job description for this position will be posted in the coming weeks, which is exciting. This position will work in collaboration with the Cambridge Arts Council and other city departments in the community to expand Cambridge's support and creative capacity of our culture and artistic community. Finally, thank you to the Vice Mayor for her work chairing the Mayor's Arts Task Force and continuing to champion the arts here in Cambridge. And to Jason Weeks and his team at the Arts Council. As we all know, Cambridge Arts has worked tirelessly to advocate for and showcase our artist community, especially during COVID. And we are confident that with Jason and his team, along with our arts organizations and our creative community as a whole, Cambridge will be able to weather this storm and bounce back even more creative than ever. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Marissa and Dany.
One second. Thank you, Matt, for your remark. For a second, I was muted. You couldn't hear me. Thank you for your remark. And at the same time, we would like to extend our thanks to the Office of the City Manager for its service in the city. Thank you. And now, please, our next speaker tonight will be Vice Mayor Malone. Please join us in welcoming Vice Mayor Malone to the podium.
I wish we were at a podium, Jean-Denis. It would be nicer to do this in person. It's really, really hard to imagine all 150 of you out there. I'm grateful that you're here and caring about the arts and that we're having this forum tonight. I do wish that we were all together. My name is Alana Mallon. I'm the Vice Mayor. I am serving my second term on the Cambridge City Council, but I'm an artist and a creator at heart. Prior to my time on the City Council, I was a clothing designer. I worked in women's fashion for a local company called Sigurd Olsen, and then I did children's clothing for many years before I became an elected official, and have tried to bring my arts background and my love of the arts and all things making into my position here on the Cambridge City Council. So it's wonderful to meet so many of you tonight who I haven't yet met. I hope to see you in person someday, but I did want to give you a little bit of a background of some of the work that I've done on the Cambridge City Council to really make sure that the city is supporting our artists and our arts organizations in a really robust way. Prior to being on the City Council, the city had a very small percentage of its entire city budget that it dedicated towards the arts community, and it was really my hope that we would expand on that, and we've been able to do that. As Matt mentioned, I was the chair of Mayor's appointed Arts Task Force, which met over the course of 9 months. We had about 20 people in the community, artists, musicians, arts organizations, dancers, city leaders, nonprofit leaders, all coming together each and every month to talk about the arts and how the city could do a better job supporting the arts and our amazing artist organizations here in Cambridge. You know, a typical task force meets every month for some period of time, puts together a recommendation and files it with the Cambridge City Council. And, you know, sometimes those recommendations get put into place and sometimes they don't. And I really wanted to make sure that our task force was very dynamic. So we acted more as an arts advisory to the Cambridge City Council, bringing policies from those monthly meetings in front of the Cambridge City Council to vote on and then put into place. So as Matt mentioned, through the Arts Task Force, we were able to do a number of things. So the first thing was getting the city to commit to more funding and a bigger percentage of the Cambridge annual budget towards the arts, including an additional $160,000 a year that goes directly out to artists in the form of grants. Previously, it was $90,000 a year. Now it's $250,000 a year to really capture a lot of those artists that were applying and not being able to access that funding. We also, as Matt mentioned, are hiring a director of arts and cultural planning. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it was put on hold for a little while, but we are writing that job description and really excited about posting that and getting that person on board, because we really feel like that person will be driving the recommendations of the Arts Task Force, because there were a lot of recommendations. There were a lot of great work that came out of that community conversation. The other thing that we did was here in Cambridge, we had a 1% for arts city ordinance, which meant that any city construction project, 1% of the hard cost of that construction would be put in for public arts. But previously it had a cap of $100,000. So we were able, through the Arts Task Force and working with city leaders, remove that cap. So for example, the Tobin School, which is one of our elementary schools that is due to be renovated over the next several years, is a $230+ million project that would have capped out at $100,000 worth of public art. Now that will be over $2 million worth of public art that we will be infusing right into our arts community. So those are some really exciting things that have happened already. And once we get that director of arts and cultural planning on board, it will be up to that person to really take those other recommendations and decide where we want to be the most impactful as a city to support our arts, support the artists that create it. The other thing that I just wanted to touch briefly on was out of that 9-month process, we really realized that artists and arts organizations needed more than funding from the city. They needed a more sustainable community-based funding mechanism. And so we worked with the Cambridge Community Foundation on what's called the Cultural Capital Fund. This was always going to be the plan. However, when COVID hit, we really needed to move quickly. And we worked with the Cambridge Community Foundation to put in the Cambridge Arts, the Cambridge Artist Relief Fund with a seed funding of $75,000 from the city. The Cambridge Community Foundation was able to raise up to $250,000, which we got out into the community to our artists who we knew they were missing those bookings, they were missing those shows, they were immediately financially impacted by the COVID pandemic, and we wanted to make it a priority to get money into people's pockets. So that was the first thing that we did. And then once we did the relief fund, we put together the Cultural Capital Fund with the Cambridge Community Foundation with $500,000 from the Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund. So this was a huge fund that was put together to really, really support the arts organizations that are here in Cambridge that were really suffering. We knew they were the first to close their doors, and we know that they will be among the last to open once this pandemic is over, and that there were specific sector-specific needs that they had around reopening that they needed funding for. So working with the mayor and the city council and the city leadership, really making sure to prioritize $500,000 worth of the mayor's disaster relief funding right into our arts community was a real priority for us. So that's what we've been working on for the past several years. I think we've got an exciting announcement tonight to make. I'll let Geeta Pradhan from the Cambridge Community Foundation make that around the future of the Cultural Capital Fund, but I'll let her do that for you guys tonight. But that's just a little bit about what we've been doing here in the city to really support our artists, our arts organizations in a more meaningful way. And I'm going to turn it over now back to the moderators so you can hear from some more of our panelists. But thank you for being here. I'm grateful that you're here. I look forward to your questions. And I will yield the floor at this point, Jean-Denis and Marissa.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for your informations. And our next speaker is Jason Weeks, Executive Director from Cambridge Arts.
Thank you so much, Jean-Denis, and it's terrific to be here tonight with all of you, with our panelists here and with everybody listening in at home or where you find yourselves. We're really grateful for you making the time tonight to be with us, to hear what's been going on and to help us begin to vision next steps and how we emerge from this crisis and pandemic that we've been dealing with. I'm super grateful to follow the Vice Mayor because it gives me the opportunity to also thank her in this setting because she's been nothing short of a change agent and a champion for the arts on the City Council, along with many of her colleagues and our mayor. And we're deeply grateful for that because we needed that in the best of times, but we needed that even more in the critical times we found ourselves in the pandemic. And so I think in Cambridge, the Vice Mayor has referenced a few of the funding sources, but it's been nothing short of miraculous what we've been able to do in just 12 short months to make sure that financial support at a minimum could be flowing, but at a maximum, we could really plan in concert with the community for how we will begin to reemerge from this crisis. And so I'm Jason Weeks. I direct the Cambridge Arts Council, as has been said. I use the pronoun series he, him, and his. And I am just really grateful to everybody for the advanced questions that got submitted and also the conversation that we'll have tonight. This helps all of us in continuing this work, but to do it in a way that really reflects and lifts up the needs and the articulated aspirations of the community. So thank you again for being here. What we did, when the pandemic first hit, March 16th, I think is a date that's emblazoned in my head forever and always. We began to reach out. We were already in partnership at Cambridge Arts with hundreds of local artists and creatives, cultural workers, local arts organizations. And so we wanted to reach out and reassure those folks that the funding that we committed was going nowhere and that we were there to be partners with technical support and to walk with them hand in hand in any way that was needed. Also to help reassure them that they could pivot away from maybe program-based activities that had been funded as part of a grant, for instance, and that those funds could also be used to help them with their most critical needs that they faced in their professional lives, but also their personal lives. And so we were able to accomplish that. And as the Vice Mayor mentioned, the terrific partnership with the Cambridge Community Foundation. Our Artist Relief Fund in Cambridge was one of the earliest and one of the longest running. We raised over $300,000 for that. And the beautiful thing with the partnership was not only could we fund, lift up, and support our resident artists and our local organizations based here in Cambridge, but what we all know is so many people come into Cambridge that may not live here, but make their livelihood here artistically. And so it gave us the opportunity to also support those folks. And so that reassurance and also new sources of funding became critical. The Cultural Capital Fund that you heard about, the Community Benefits Fund, and the board of that group here in the city has been miraculous in making sure that we could provide financial support and assistance to our nonprofit sector broadly, and especially to our arts and cultural organizations. And then we also had the investment that the Vice Mayor talked about in our direct grant making through Cambridge Arts. Previously, we granted between $90,000 and $100,000, as was referenced. It's what we had in combination with some money from the state of Massachusetts through the Massachusetts Cultural Council, through their local cultural council program. And also, we were one of the early cities in the Commonwealth where the city actually contributed to that program, but it was never enough relative to the need. And so that program almost tripled in investment. And this year we're granting out actually $350,000 to support a variety of activities and 3 new grant tracks, which acknowledge many different things, but help us think differently and more critically about what organizations need to support and thrive, and help us think about how to meet the moment with racial justice, the Black Lives Matter movement. We came out with a whole grant funding track for art for racial justice so we could lift up Black excellence, support our BIPOC artists and creatives, and create new opportunities for those folks to be part of the creative conversation here in Cambridge. And then finally, we have our project-based grants that continued, but we doubled the commitment there with the financial resources that we had, and continued to support specifically the port neighborhood in creative placemaking and importantly, creative placekeeping. So all 4 of those grant tracks are out, they're announced. We moved as quickly as we could, especially to support our cultural anchors that become a lifeline for so many artists and cultural workers here in the city. And so along with funding and identifying all those opportunities financially, we also knew it was going to be important to learn and to aggregate information. There was so much coming at all of us from the federal government, regionally, from the state government, from our local government about opportunities that we needed a way to distill that information and provide it to our artists and creatives locally and to our organizations. And so we began to be a repository for that. And we have to thank and acknowledge our partners at the Massachusetts Cultural Council. We have representatives on the call tonight listening in to what the conversation is and to your questions. We also thanked our partners at Mass Creative, our statewide arts advocacy organization, and Americans for the Arts at the national level, and New England Foundation for the Arts regionally. They've all been amazing partners in surveys, in information about financial support and grants, and in just helping people access the technical needs that they have, the technical support to satisfy the needs that they have just now. And so, as Matt mentioned at the head of the conversation, we did implement an Arts Reopening Advisory Committee, and that's been absolutely essential for the city at the council level and in policy making and thinking around that, at the operational level with departments, and considering how best to support the community and listening to what you have articulated as needs and being able to try and connect those dots, provide the support and the technical partnership to get that done. And then, finally, I would say, the city is at its best when we're partnering with the Community Foundation, when we're partnering with the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority, when we're partnering with our local developers like Biomed Realty and Alexandria Realty, Matemco, MIT and Harvard University and Lesley University. They're all amazing partners, and they've all stepped up to the plate to assist us in this work and help us think creatively about how we can support the community. So that work continues. It will continue after tonight, but it will be heavily informed by the information that gets exchanged tonight in our conversation. So I'll just end with, again, thanks for showing up. Thanks for being our partners in making sure that we at Cambridge Arts and we more broadly at the city hear directly from you about your needs and how we can best respond to those. So I'll send it back to Jean-Denis and Marissa with thanks.
I thought Marissa was going to introduce our next speaker, but she will do the next one. Our next speaker, thank you, Jason, for your information. Thank you. And our next speaker is Geta Pradhan, President of Cambridge Community Foundation. You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. And I want to start by acknowledging what a difficult year it has been for all of us, for all of you, especially. As the mother of a musician, I know how hard it is. And I want to also acknowledge the fact that there is hope for the future. We've had changes in the federal government. The vaccine has come out, and hopefully we'll all get back together. And I sort of step back and I think for a moment that before the pandemic hit, we've been so consumed by the pandemic that we've almost forgotten the fact that we were really concerned about gentrification and the loss of the artists and the arts in Cambridge before the pandemic hit. And in fact, we were getting ready to launch, to host our annual event, honoring 20 cultural visionaries, amazing people from Cambridge who had made their name in the arts, not only nationally, but also internationally. And to think about the fact that if there were these people who came, who came up from our community, who belonged to our community, what were we going to do about the future of our community? And had made a commitment and had actually coming out of the Arts Task Force had made a commitment to launch a cultural capital fund. Then, of course, the pandemic hit and everything sort of slowed down. But I wanted to tell you that we are not stepping back from that commitment. We are committed to trying to raise and build a permanent fund for the arts, which will be hopefully a $5 million fund. I can tell you that we've raised 1% of that already. We have $50,000 in the bank for that, while we've been raising other money for the what we call the Cultural Capital Now Fund, because the need was immediate. We needed to act immediately, and that's where we put our energy and our resources. So I'm going to I have a few slides that I want to share with you because there are a lot has happened over the last year, and I just want to share that with you. I think it's exciting to see how much we've been able to do for the arts. So, okay, and I'm going to put that on a slide share. Okay. So, the Cambridge Community Foundation is your community foundation. We feel your pain, we care about your well-being, and we are there for you in all kinds of different ways. Our three major goals are shared prosperity, social equity, and cultural richness. And a lot of people have asked me, why cultural richness? Why not education? Why not so many other things? And I really believe that cultural richness is, culture for our community, creativity, arts is the DNA of Cambridge, which is why it has been able to become a creative, innovative community and why it has such an amazing innovation sector. So this, something that is of real importance to us as a foundation is to make sure that our cultural sector, our artists, and our cultural organizations can continue to thrive in the community. And, I have to tell you that one of the things that I realized this year was that that the arts sector and arts in Cambridge have a lot of friends, a lot of champions, and a lot of well-wishers. And we saw that in the way, people responded to what was going on in the community. So for us as a foundation, we have been, historically, we've supported the arts. And over the past 5 years, about 15 to 20% of our community fund, which is the income that that comes off of our endowment that goes into our grant making, about 15 to 20% of it goes into the arts every year. But I think what was really exciting for me is when I see what happened over the course of this year, and we sort of came up with a little bit of a timeline. As I mentioned, in March, we were getting ready to launch our big event, to honor cultural visionaries and start raising money for the endowment fund. And then COVID hit, and our spring round of grant making came up, and we realized that we actually had to pivot immediately and say, use the money for whatever you need to use it for. And so the arts, as well as other nonprofits, were able to do that. but we also, Jason mentioned March 16th, that's actually when we started talking about, so what should we do now? We were having conversations with Alana, with Jason, with, some of our donors, and we put together the Artist Relief Fund. And by I think the third week of March, I think it was March 23rd, we launched the Artist Relief Fund along with an emergency fund for Cambridge. And by the end of August, we actually closed the fund thinking, we had been thinking, COVID will go away and we will be back on recovery and we need to start thinking about recovery. But of course, that didn't happen. But we gave out about 269 grants to individual artists and 36 grants to organizations out of the money that we raised for the Artist Relief Fund. And I will get into the numbers in the next couple of slides. In October, we said, we were still thinking that maybe things will recover, but we started to build the Cultural Capital Fund and had conversations with the city. And by December, we were able to actually not just launch, but even make a bulk, at least more than half of the fund was sort of activated by mid-December. In this time, we had our fall grants. We continued to keep it open to the sector. And, as spring comes around, our new grant making round is actually still making it open and available to nonprofits to use money the way they need to use it. I have to tell you, it's very shocking to see how much the need is and how many grants and how many requests and the size of requests that we are getting. So the need continues and our commitment to building the fund and to continuing fundraising continues. The one exciting thing that I want to share is that, as you can see that, by December, we had spent about half of the Cultural Capital Fund from the Mayor's disaster relief money that we had raised, the 500,000 that Alana mentioned. I think most of the organizations that we were getting had received funding through that. They had also received funding from the community benefits money. And we were sort of thinking, okay, what do we do with the rest of the money? How do we activate it? And I'm really pleased to let you know that I just heard back from David Kale, the Assistant City Manager for Finance today, that we will be able to use at least a portion of the leftover money, which is about 170,000, because we did make grants after December. So we have about 160 odd left, of which we will be able to use about a third of it to support emerging organizations, which tend to be largely organizations led by people of color. They can be fiscally sponsored organizations. They're ideas and wonderful ideas that have come out actually during this pandemic, where people have come together and launched new things, or they were quiet people who were doing sporadic work, but they can now apply for this funding, which initially was set aside only for organizations that had consistently been providing programming for the past 2 years. So we will be opening that up. Now, as far as the grant making that has gone through the Cambridge Community Foundation since the pandemic, I think it is really interesting to see that we have given out $805,007 towards the arts to 105 organizations and 269 individual artists. And how that breaks down is that the Artist Relief Fund actually raised about 270,000. All of that money has been put back out into the community, and that money was seeded by the foundation at 50,000, by the city at 75,000, and several, Jason mentioned some of our real estate companies. New England Development put in 25,000, and then many people gave money to this. We got gifts from $5 to the $75,000 that we got from the city. So there were a range of people, and it really reinforced the fact that people really care about this. Then the Cultural Capital Fund, which has two parts. The Cultural Capital Fund is the permanent fund for the arts that we are going to build up, and it's going to be we made a commitment of trying to raise $5 million over the next 5 years. and it's going to build up. I think it's going to be exciting to see how that builds up. But so some part of it is the endowment money that will always be a permanent source of funding for the arts in Cambridge. And then there is the Cultural Capital Now Fund, which we put the Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund of 500,000, and we've raised an additional 172,000 for that fund. We've given out 34 grants from that fund, and so we still have some money that we are going to be distributing. Some, as I mentioned, that will go towards emerging organizations. Some that the city still wants to hold back on for a little while to see if there is any new emerging need that comes up. And I think that's a very wise thing to do. But we also have the money that we've raised. 100,000 of it was for the cultural district. We were able to support an organization that was going out of business. We were able to support Starlight Square, which was fantastic. It was magic. It reinforced for people the value of the arts to push economic development, to help small businesses, to bring people together, to heal, to celebrate. It was really fantastic. And then there is a new thing that we have started, which is called our Imagined in Cambridge grants, which are social innovation awards. And of the 10 awardees that we've had in the past 2 years, 3 of them have been arts related organizations, art related innovative projects. So we're hoping to continue to support that. We have recently launched a fund that is giving micro grants to people who have great ideas in Cambridge and want to do something with them. Those are applicants of the Imagined in Cambridge projects. As far as our own grant making goes, over the last 2 cycles, this is money that have been specifically gone to arts organizations. 86,000 in the spring cycle and the fall cycle, and we have now the spring cycle for 21 coming up. We will continue to fund and stay focused on that. I think with that was my last slide, and I look forward to your engagement and for you to know that we are there for you, and we are working really hard to make sure that there is permanent funding for the arts in Cambridge. So with that, Dany, I'm done. Back to you and Marissa.
Thank you so much for that, Geeta. Our next speaker on the program is Michael Monestein, Executive Director of the Central Square Bid. So please join us in welcoming Michael.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Michael Monestein. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Square Business Improvement District. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization focused on placekeeping in the cultural district. But I'm gonna run you through a few slides, but first and foremost, I wanna call out that as we exit this health crisis, I recognize that Central Square will be entering into an identity crisis with the closures of important arts organizations such as Improv, the Middle East, Cantab, EMF, Green Street, studios, and important watering holes like the Field and the People's Republic. But I do want to share with you some of the work that we've been doing in the square. Our work focuses on a 24-block area stretching from City Hall down to the old Necco factory. It reaches and respects the 4 historic neighborhoods that surround the square. And the bid officially got to work just last October. You'll see our team in orange in the square 7 days a week, and our office is located at 620 Mass Ave. The door is always open. Please come visit, but make sure you wear a mask. One of the first things we did was organize 50 community members at 8 Essex Street, which was a vacant storefront. Sort of activating storefronts and turning vacancy into vibrancy is one of our goals. And it's also a way that we can hold space when we don't own space. Within this meeting, we were able to get a lot of excitement and ideas that was matched by a desire to make those ideas happen. And we really see ourselves as stewards in Central Square. We were fortunate to be part of the Boston Foundation's Place Leadership Network. Our cohort included the Dance Complex and the Community Arts Center. And through that work, we partnered with other cultural organizations throughout the Commonwealth, where we learned really about the connection between arts and culture, a resilient local economy, social services, and advocacy. You've probably seen our work on pole banners throughout the district, highlighting the stories of Central, past and present, Cambridge Black Trailblazers, the organizers of Cambridge Carnival, and the folks behind Central's beloved small businesses have rotated as the face of Central Square. And to think this was all before COVID happened, which rocked our organization in Central Square, really showing that this ecosystem is weak, but that our community is strong. Our team of ambassadors, our frontline workers, our office didn't close throughout the pandemic. It went into hyperdrive, beginning with a district assessment of bid retailers, restaurants, social service providers, arts organizations, and property owners. From there, we drafted legislative agenda for emergency relief for arts orgs, small businesses, small property owners, that we brought to City Council and our state elected officials. But we didn't stop there. We spun up CSQ Live and brought the Cultural District online, paying gig economy workers to share their expertise. We collaborated with IDEO on a Hello Again campaign, our public safety reentry campaign. This was so successful, it was picked up citywide. And since the bid launched, we've helped facilitate the creation of 25 new pieces of public art, first through Murals for the Movement, and then Speak Your Piece, curated by Rixie Fernandez. Both of these campaigns centered and paid artists of color. And for us, food is culture too. You can eat around the world in Central Square. And the bid brought all of the heat lamps and assisted 17 restaurants to turn their dining rooms inside out. We're excited to welcome Cicada Coffee Shop to Central Square too. They open tomorrow on Prospect Street, and I hope that you come check them out. But our biggest accomplishment, and one that we're super proud about, is Starlight Square, an idea we had pre-COVID that was brought to the city of Cambridge as any one of us could, to the Special Events Committee. We wanted to create a square within the square. Central Square is actually just a long corridor, but we wanted to create a civic center, and we did, times 10. With partners at Flag Street Studio, we took a 12-month project and sprinted to making it complete in just 12 weeks.